Hello, I'm Heidi and welcome to my channel. In this video, we are going to cover one of the questions that I'm getting asked quite often as a Finnish teacher, and it's how long does it take to learn Finnish? Actually, I made another video regarding this topic, although indirectly regarding this topic. It's about the CEFR levels and what they mean. If you haven't seen it yet, I highly recommend to check it out. I'll leave you the link in the description. It's important to understand the different language levels before we can actually talk about how long does learning Finnish take. Because if you don't know how the language levels work and how we can measure progress, then we cannot really formulate a good answer to this question either. So really, I recommend that you check it out first and then come back to this video. Let's start with the main factors that you'll need to keep in mind when you are answering the question, how long does it take to learn Finnish? Or how long does it take to learn any language? First of all, what is your current Finnish level? If I'm getting asked randomly how long does it take to learn Finnish, well, this would be my first or one of the first questions. Obviously, you have to know where you are at to be able to address how long does it take to move forward. As you might know, there are different levels called A1, A2, B1, B2, C1, and C2. The second question is, what languages do you already speak well and how similar are they to Finnish? Because if you speak some similar language, which in the case of Finnish would be Estonian, which is the closest big language that is spoken, then that might make your learning a lot easier because they share similar vocabulary and similar grammar as well. Well, if you do not speak Estonian, it might be quite hard to compare vocabulary or even to compare grammar. And that has to be taken into account. If you are studying German as an English speaker, learning German is considerably easier than learning Finnish as an English speaker because German and Finnish are way closer to each other linguistically and they share a lot of vocabulary, or at least the vocabulary resembles a lot. And also, many grammar structures are very similar. Then the third question is, how much time do you have on daily and on weekly basis for Finnish practice? It's really important to be able to set yourself realistic goals, to be able to know how long it most likely will take for you to get to X level. This is really important, specifically if you are preparing for an official language test like YKI for your paperwork and you need a Finnish passport or you need a Finnish residence permit. Now let's talk about numbers. Here I have a chart of Common European Framework of Reference for Languages, or so-called CEFR. I explained what all these levels mean in the other video, but here I have more specifically how many hours is the estimation for reaching, for example, A1 or A2 level. All right, so A1 is the lowest of the levels. It is the first one you can reach after you have zero knowledge of Finnish, and it takes approximately from 90 to 100 hours of guided learning. I'm soon going to get back to what that guided learning actually means, but before that, I want to also tell you how we can transfer these CEFR levels to YKI levels. If you are taking the basic YKI test, the beginner YKI test, and you can get the grade from 1 to 2. And this first level test corresponds to levels A1 and A2. But what most people are interested in is the intermediate YKI test. And you can get either the grade 3 or 4 from that test. And the intermediate YKI corresponds to the levels B1 and B2. There's also advanced UKI test, and you can get either grade 5 or 6. And the advanced UKI test corresponds to the levels C1 and C2 in the CEFR level system. In UKI, 4 different areas of language learning are addressed. They test your speaking skills, reading skills, listening skills, and writing skills. And you will get a grade of all of these skills. You do not get just one grade, you actually get 4. Now, let's go back to these terrifying looking numbers here and what they actually mean. So, if you are a complete beginner, you don't know any Finnish yet, and you would want to get to A1 level, then you need most likely from 90 to 100 hours of guided learning. Guided learning includes, for example, Finnish courses, both in person and online, also Finnish tutoring, when there's basically someone qualified who can give you feedback so that you can process better and faster. Also, if you are following a structured language learning book, which has exercises, and you are completing the exercises and checking the right answers with an answer key, that also counts as guided learning. The important things for guided learning is that there's a clear learning path, clear tasks, and answers, something that you can actually measure. You can measure the process and the progress, and you can see what you are doing well and what you need to improve. And you also have the tools for improving. That's why self-learning can be quite problematic, because if you do not have any feedback, if you cannot check the answers, or you are trying to practice writing, but you don't have anyone who can actually review it and give you feedback, it can be really hard to progress from one level to another. Self-practice is also fundamental, and you need it to support the guided learning. But pay attention to the fact that guided learning is always one way or another required for actually being able to progress appropriately in your language learning. If you would like to book guided learning lessons with me, you can book them by using the link below this video. In these lessons, we can focus on the areas that are important for you. We start from the level where you are at, and we are working towards improving your Finnish in different areas. Depending on your level, the lessons can be structured around a book and progressing together with the book and combining it with practical exercises in speaking and in writing. Or if you have already learned more Finnish and are almost at the intermediate level or above, we can identify together where you have gaps in your language knowledge and how to fill those gaps. We can practice writing and speaking, and I will give you feedback on your progress. If you want to reach B1 level, which is the minimum requirement for passing the intermediate UKI test, you would need approximately from 350 to 400 hours of guided learning if you are a complete beginner. Then, of course, if you are already at A2, we can do some calculating and we can assume that you have already learned quite a lot of Finnish before. And we could say we can maybe take out 180 hours of, let's say, this 350 and see what that would make in total to have some estimation. But remember, it's always important to note that apart from the guided learning, you also need to practice vocabulary, and it's very personal how long you need for that vocabulary practice and for keeping the new words and sentences and expressions in your memory. Also, I want to talk about another language ranking, the so-called FSL language difficulty ranking. This helps you maybe to understand where Finnish is in the category if we are comparing Finnish to other languages and the difficulties that learners often have. Now, let's assume that English is your mother tongue or that you speak fluent English. In that category, the languages that are similar or rather similar to English would belong to a category 1. They include many European languages, European Romance languages, and Germanic languages, except German. According to this calculation, learning that language well takes approximately 575 to 600 hours. And here I've also transferred how many weeks full time that would mean. So you can see that it requires actually a lot of weeks. And even if you are practicing, let's say, an easy language, reaching fluency in 3 months is quite impossible. Or reaching fluency even in 1 or few years is quite impossible. And most of us adults cannot dedicate our full life just on learning a language because we have other commitments like a full-time job, maybe family, etc. Category number 2 includes German. All right, so German is way more similar to English than Finnish is, for instance. And according to their calculation, it would take you around 750 hours to learn German. And in the category 3, we have Indonesian, Malaysian, and Swahili. Their grammar and vocabulary is considerably more different, and it would take approximately 900 hours to learn one of these languages if you speak fluent English. Then in the category 4, we have many Slavic languages. We have Icelandic, Slavic languages, Finno-Ugric languages, many African languages, and Semitic languages. Learning one of these would take you approximately 1,100 hours, which would mean basically 11 months full time. And this is, I would say, the minimum expecting that you are using in every of those hours of practice the most efficient way possible. In the category 5, we have languages of exceptional linguistic or cultural difference, and this would include Arabic, Cantonese, Mandarin, Japanese, and Korean. And learning one of these would take you approximately 2,200 hours. And that would mean 22 months full time, given that your learning is very efficient and you are using every of those learning hours in a very efficient manner. So where is Finnish in this scale? Finnish belongs to the group 4. So Finnish is sometimes called one of the hardest languages in the world. It really depends on what's your mother tongue. If your mother tongue is English or you speak fluent English, I would say that it's not the hardest language because probably, for example, Mandarin Chinese is way harder to learn than Finnish. But Finnish is not an easy language to learn. It's in the category 4 and it really requires some serious practice. So even if you learned maybe Spanish easily in the past, well, learning Finnish is like learning Spanish, but 4 times more difficult. And another estimation to give you more resources. I also found this. So on one website that's focused on language teaching, they are estimating that you can reach A1 in Finnish roughly in 140 or 180 hours, something in between. And to reach B1, you would need roughly 630 to 730 hours. And if we talk about learning Finnish fluently, so I would say that is probably from B C2 onwards, B2, C1 could be considered somewhat fluent already. That would take you about 1,550 hours to 1,650 hours. So quite a lot of learning. Next, let's do some maths. Here's my estimation. So let's say that you roughly need 600 hours for B1 in Finnish, given all the previous data and given that Finnish is way harder than one of the easiest languages for learning. And remember, this can vary on many factors discussed before. But if you are already at A1 level and you want to reach B1 level, it's a 2-level jump. All right. So let's say you need in total 600 hours, and let's assume you have practiced already around 100 hours because you're at A1. That means that you have 500 hours left. If you practice 2 hours every day for 5 days a week, it makes 10 hours a week in total. And in a month, you are practicing 40 hours. This is, I would say, somewhat doable if you are practicing on regular basis in the evenings after work, but it requires a lot of self-discipline. Then you would need in total 50 months for getting to that 500 hours. And that in years is about 2 years. So as you can see, there's not really any fast solution for learning a language. It takes a lot of time and practice and structure. And it's good to keep this in mind when you are planning your studies. Take it as an important part of your integration and start as soon as possible after moving to Finland, or even before moving to Finland if possible. How can I help you? I can help you in your learning process by helping you to choose the most efficient materials for you or the learning methods for you. I can recommend material and help you to maintain focus and also help you to monitor your progress. I know that often if we are just left on our own and we want to practice, we really, really want to, but there are so many other things in life that can come in a way. So sometimes that external pressure can be very helpful. I would say that in most cases, it can be very helpful to have that positive external pressure that you know that, okay, next week I'm going to have my lesson at this time and I will have to have this and this and this done by that time. I can also help you to practice speaking in different situations. I know that this is one of the things that many learners struggle the most because finding possibilities to actually practice with Finns can be challenging if you are still a beginner, because many natives do not know how to modify their speech and make it a bit slower and to choose the correct vocabulary that you already know, and they might speak way too fast and with harder vocabulary, and then it can become very frustrating for you when you are trying to practice. You can practice speaking definitely at all levels, but it has to be adequate for what you already have practiced before. I can also help you in correcting and giving feedback on your written assignments. Writing is one of the best ways to learn because you have more time to think what you want to say than if you had to speak it out loud. And this also activates your vocabulary. Instead of using vocabulary passively, you have to actively put together words and structures and think, how would you want to say this thing that you have in mind? In my lessons, I can, of course, also answer all of your questions regarding grammar and vocabulary. I have studied the Finnish language quite extensively myself, and I can confidently say that I can explain nearly any structure, and if I cannot explain something, I will find the answer for you. If you would like to book a specialized lesson for you, you can find the details in the description. I hope that this gave you a better understanding on what to expect as a language learner and how much time and effort you have to put in learning the Finnish language. If you found this useful, give me thumbs up and follow my channel. It will help YouTube to show this video to more Finnish learners, and it will help even more people. Thank you for watching and have a nice day.